joining today. Thank you. Quick note for folks, this is being recorded. So for any of your colleagues or folks you work with who maybe can't make it today, we'll be able to share this recording with you as well, I'm sure. So again, thank you so much for joining today. My name is Molly O'Neill, and I'm the Director of Community Partnerships and Conservation here at the Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden. We are thrilled to be sponsoring this event with our newest partner, Groundwork Ohio River Valley. The zoo will be home to a Groundwork Green Team starting this summer, which is incredible. And that means we'll have a small group of young folks here who we can learn and grow together with while helping them develop professional and personal skills. And the cool thing is they get paid for it. So definitely check out the Groundwork website to see how it works and read a little bit more about what they do. We really love this partnership because both of our organizations envision a planet where people and wildlife coexist and thrive. And when we say people, we mean all people. We know diversity is critical for healthy, resilient, sustainable systems. And the zoo is committed to understanding and addressing some of the issues and the barriers for some of our fellow humans as related to diversity, equity, access, inclusion in green spaces and jobs and experiences. So I don't want to take up too much time. Thank you for being here. Celebrating Black history and hearing from members of Black communities helps us think critically about present day environmental and social justice issues, since it's going to take all of us working together to achieve our goals. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and hand it off to Tanner with Groundwork to get things started.
Yeah, thank you, Molly. Thank you, everyone, for being here. My name is Tanner. Yes, I am the co-executive director of Groundwork Ohio River Valley. We like to say groundwork is where justice and the environment meet. But what does that actually mean? Yes, we have a lot of acronyms about DEI, JA, etc. We have a lot of terminology and verbiage we use. But when you really get to it, there's three things I like to think about as it relates to social, racial, environmental justice and the work that we do. The first is authenticity. And I think you're going to hear a lot of that today. I'm really excited to introduce you to the three panelists and moderator who are all part of the Groundwork family, be it staff, youth employee, or board member, and share their stories and their insights and some real talk, because that's the first way that we go about addressing some of the issues. Second is disruption. We do it with a smile, but our green teams, as Molly mentioned, these are forms of disruption because we're bringing representation and diversity into places that don't traditionally support different people, different ideas necessarily all the time. So we like to think of our programs as disrupting the status quo. And third is restoration. If I could pick one word about our organization, it would be restoration, not just for land, but for people, combining income and quality of life into everything that we do. We see the lives of youth and people across the city and region changing when they're able to connect to the environment and find that their priorities and the priorities of the environment can be one and the same. So without further ado, next slide, please. I'd like to introduce Kelsey Hawkins Johnson. She's Groundwork's Community Outreach Coordinator, and she does all sorts of other things at Groundwork. I'm going to let her explain that. But Kelsey, I'm really proud to have you representing Groundwork today. So please jump in and take it away, introduce yourself and the panelists.
Yes, thank you, Tanner, as well as Molly, for welcoming us into this space. Again, my name is Kelsey Hawkins Johnson. I wear a lot of hats at Groundwork, but I'm mainly the Community Outreach Coordinator. I've also served as the Mountain and Main Street Ambassador, where I have taken youth to a national park. I have a background in environmental anthropology, particularly around people's relationship with their environment, as well as I have a background in grassroots organizing, advocacy, policy, and writing. I have a journalistic background as well. And so that's a little bit about me. The way that this event is going to occur is that I'm going to talk about the agenda for today, as well as some norms. And then you're going to hear from the three panelists who will be talking about their experience and their background. So for today, we had the welcome done by Tanner and Molly. Introduction is from me, as well as I'll be introducing the speakers coming up. The speakers will be presenting for 10 minutes, and then there's going to be a Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions that come up in between their presentations, the Q&A would be the opportunity for you to put your questions in the chat box or to speak verbally. And so for some norms, Molly has said in the beginning to mute your microphone when you're not speaking, and this is just courtesy for the speakers who will be talking. Also, if you could turn off your camera if you're doing something distracting, and also to take a break as well, because being in the virtual space can be exhausting. If you have a question, use the chat box or use your raise hand function. Also, this is a learning environment, so please give grace to yourself and others while in this space. And be mindful of pronouns. I go by she, her pronouns, but if you do hear someone introduce themselves with a pronoun, please be respectful of how they introduce themselves, as well as sit with discomfort and be open to challenge. Again, this is a learning environment. Sit with discomfort and be open to the challenges that you have within yourself. I also want to open up and acknowledge the indigenous peoples, the land that we're on. I know this is an event for like Black environmentalists, but we have to give credit for the indigenous folks who are the original caretakers of the land. So now the speakers. So we have three amazing speakers, all of them I know. We have a board member and staff members here who are represented. And so the first person who will be speaking today is Aristotle Bowie, and he is a 2017 Cincinnati Zoo Academy graduate. He has worked with Groundwork for 6+ years, and he enjoys hiking, camping, skateboarding, and photography. After Bowie is Jade Edwards, who will be presenting. Jada majored in biology and minored in environmental studies at Northern Kentucky University. She is a Cincinnati native who is passionate about the environment and conservation. She enjoys hiking, nature walks, and teaching others about the environment. In the past, she has worked in community engagement and hopes to get more people involved in environmental protection. And then lastly is Dr. Morgan Green. He is a pediatric hospitalist at Loma Linda Children's Hospital. He is a proud mentee of Dr. Noshen Rizani, the founder of the Center for Nature and Health. During his residency at UCSF, Benioff Children's Hospital of Oakland, he worked with Dr. Rizani and specifically helped with community engagement and resident curriculum within the SHINE program, an initiative that helps to connect patients seen in clinic from all walks of life, whether that be low-income patient populations, immigrants, refugees, or people of color, to the vast amount of regional parks in their community. So I'm going to hand it off to the speakers now who are going to be talking about their experience. So Aristotle, you can begin.
You're on mute, Aristotle. You look like you were engaging like really like intentionally. Wanted to make sure we got to hear that.
Wow. Yeah. So like you heard, my name is Aristotle Bowie. I graduated from the Zoo Academy in 2017. I had the opportunity to attend that school thanks to Tanner, because he had an eye-opening experience for me as far as high school goes. It was a really positive thing. But what I'm here to talk about is why I decided to pursue a career or an interest in conservation. So going out with my friends and stuff, we would hike and explore the woods and stuff, but we would encounter a lot of dangerous stuff, whether it be dump cars or glass or needles and stuff from people dumping off the side of the road and from the Hamilton Avenue Street. into the Mount Airy Forest. So for me, I was just concerned about other kids that were running that kind of stuff and how it kind of takes you out of like the joy of being outside and something that's so off-putting and depressing. But with that, I like to get kids outside more. Education is this as far as exposing children to the outdoors. I had the pleasure of going to a national park through groundwork, and it was a great time, but it was pretty lonely. I didn't have many people to relate to as far as people with my background. And I want to change that. But as far as changing that, there are several issues dealing with that. So my slides are why don't Black people frequent national parks? So for Black people, we are less than 2% of the visitors of national parks, but Black people laid the foundation for national parks in the West. Some of the issues would be the fact that the outdoors for Black people is rooted in slavery. And there's not really, I can't give a solution for that per se, but that's a valid reason for why a lot of people don't go outdoors. They're worried about, something happening or, being somewhere strange with people that you don't really have in common with. Doesn't really give an incentive to go out. And another issue is the lack of education. So like I said, Black people laid the foundation of the West, whether it be the Buffalo Soldiers or other units in the Army moving west and protecting supply runs and defending forests from timber thieves and poachers. And another issue would be lack of representation. So like I stated before, I don't see a lot of people that look like me, and it's kind of disheartening to see. So with me, I like to inspire kids to see that, you can care about this, and other people that look like you care about this too. And I feel with the, sorry about that. I'm moving a little fast and ignoring notes. I feel like with the education and representation go hand in hand. So with somebody that looks like you telling stories about Black people in the past that, were such pioneers, you have a deeper connection to it, and it lets you be more inspired by it. So yeah, I guess that's my piece. Even though it was like 5 minutes.
Thank you, Bowie. All right, so next we're going to hear from Jade Edwards, and Jade has prepared a presentation.
Thank you for the introduction, Kelsey. Could you click through so the pictures show up? Thank you. So I wanted to begin by telling you all my story and how I got involved with the field of conservation. When I was in high school, I was very adamant about being a microbiologist. I wanted to study microorganisms like viruses, bacteria, and protists. And my junior year, actually, I was randomly placed in an environmental science class, and I was kind of upset about it. I was like, this is one of my electives. I want to do something fun. I want to do something like art. I want to be active. But then I was like, you know what? I like science, so I decided to stay in the class. And I'm glad that I did, because I ended up loving it. I had always grown up like playing outside, loving the outdoors, but I didn't know that I could make a career out of it until I was placed in that class. So after being in that class, I decided, you know what, I'm going to try to do something like majoring with environmental science. And I ended up going to Northern Kentucky University, majoring in biology with a focus on ecology, evolution, organismal, and minoring in environmental studies. So whenever I would be out with family or friends, or even like family friends, they would ask me what my degree is in or what I do, and I would always answer ecology. And people would look at me and say, "What is ecology?" And I would go with, "Oh, the textbook definition is the study of organisms and how they interact in their environments." And then I would think to myself, like, why does no one know what ecology is? And what does this group of people have in common that doesn't know what ecology is? A lot of them look like me. And if I hadn't have taken that environmental science class, I probably wouldn't know what ecology is either. So, I wanted to talk about the pictures that I have on the slide, and ecology, environmental science, and conservation. It's not just being outdoors. There's a wide range of things that you can actually do with it. In the first picture, I was doing community engagement. My freshman year of college, we had a research project where we were looking to build a green space in Newport, Kentucky. So we went out into the community and had 6 different meetings and talked to them about what they wanted to see in this green space. And we ended up getting them a new park, the Bernadette Hawkins Park, done in Newport. And then the next 2 pictures, my second year of college, I did a research experience for undergraduates where I went to Miami University and I studied the Texas hornshell mussel, which is endangered. And I was doing a lot of lab work, which you can see in the far right picture. And then when I wasn't doing lab work, I was doing coding in the program R on my computer, which kind of confused me at first because I'm not a computer science major, but I spent hours a day coding. But it's a valuable skill to have for biology and environmental science majors. And then in the middle picture, I am giving a discussion on my final project. So going back to my college experiences, yes, I've had some very valuable experiences, but I've also been in the situation where I was the only Black person in a majority of my classes at NKU. And I also did not have like representation seen within my professors within my major. And I also had a negative response from some of my peers because I would say, "Oh, yeah, I'm a biology major." And I would get, "Oh, well, only nerds like STEM classes," or "You must spend a lot of time studying." And I was like, why is that? Why do I get this negative response from my peers that look like me, my Black peers? So I'll come back to that. Next slide, please. I would like to say that it starts young. With a lot of people of color and Black people, you don't have access to environmental activities or get information about environmental careers. Because even for me, like if I hadn't have been accidentally placed in that environmental science class, I wouldn't know about the environmental field and having a career in it. I wouldn't be where I am today. Something that I love about groundwork is that we have our Green Team Youth Program where we have high schoolers come in and we talk to them about green careers. We go outside and they do invasive species monitoring. They learn how to build trails and build fences, and they're just immersed in nature and experiencing their environment. A lot of our youth that we work with on the Green Team, they come from diverse backgrounds. And I'll ask them, like, "Do you like being on the Green Team? What would you be doing if you weren't here?" And the response I get is, "Oh, I don't really go outside. Like, I like playing video games or like being on my phone. I don't really have a relationship with nature," which is pretty awesome for us to be able to show this younger generation that you can go outside and have that relationship with your environment. So going back to some of the pictures, in the picture on the far left, that's me working with my Green Team kids from the Great Parks Green Team last summer. And we were drilling a gravel bed. A lot of them they never used a drill before, so it was their first time using a power tool, or even some of the hand tools that we used. It was their first time being able to work with them. And in the second picture, I was doing some water quality monitoring. So we got in kayaks and kayaked across the Little Miami River to do our studying. And if you had told me back in high school that I would be getting paid to kayak, I wouldn't believe you. And then in the final picture, we were doing some invasive species monitoring. So going back to like working with youth, I think it's very important for them to have these skills, even if they don't go into an environmental field, because we teach some of them like about CSOs, which are combined sewer overflows. And yeah, it's pretty gross, but a lot of them didn't know what it was ahead of time. So like if we have heavy rain like we're experiencing today, and a lot of people are flushing their toilets or showering, the sewer system can't hold all of that water, and raw sewage can overflow into the Ohio River. And just having that knowledge, even if you don't go into an environmental field, like the average person might not know what a CSO is, but these kids do, and that's very powerful for them. And it's rewarding for me to be able to work with kids and teach them about the environment, because I can be that Black figure in conservation for them that I never got to see when I was growing up. So I just wanted to finish by saying that we need that representation, and we need access, and we need diversity in these fields. Thank you.
You're on mute too, Kelsey.
Oh, thank you, Jade, for that presentation. It's very informative and impacting as well. And so we have one more speaker for today. His name is Dr. Morgan Green, and he doesn't have a slide, but he will be speaking about his experience within parks and environmental engagement.
Yes, I still do have a presentation, although it may not be accompanied with pictures. And just reminding, because I love talking, reminding that this is the time where we have about 10 minutes or so.
Yes, and then do you need that slide up, Dr. Morgan?
I guess it's nice. I do not need it, but I do like that picture of me, and so that's fine. But as that's working out, I'll continue. So I've been friends with Tanner for a while, and I am on the board of the Groundwork Ohio River Valley. When I was asked to come into this type of presentation with these awesome people whose stories I have loved to hear thus far, I thought about what would be the best kind of impactful conversation to go through. And I thought about representation and leadership and hiring. So my journey in outdoor spaces kind of started within residency. So I'm a pediatrician. Hospital medicine or hospitalist just means that I don't do clinic, as although I'm a big fan of vaccines and answering people's questions. But my main job is when people come into the hospital and are too sick to get out, they see me day after day to help them knock out from their asthma flare or their bad infection. Like that's my job. When I was doing training in Northern California, UCSF Oakland, lovingly Cho, I met an awesome doctor, Nushin Razani, who brought me to an excellent partnership she had with our hospital and the East Bay Regional Park System. There was extensive and intentional outreach on their hospital on the East Bay Park System, recognizing what Aristotle, what he kind of voiced, and not having many of their staff and many of the participants who come through the park being representative from the community. I worked in the Oakland area. Oakland has a large Black population. We have a very large Latino population, and those percentages were not reflected in park participation. So one of their interventions was partnering with our hospital system so that we, as the physicians and the doctors, can leverage those relationships we had with our patients and help to bring in a program recognizing where people struggle in transportation, in that fear of, I get the terminology right now is othering, but for those who may not be super familiar, if you are coming from a background that you don't think will be very well received, we had a lot of immigrants that we would help to bring into the program. We had many family members of our patients who did not speak English. We had people who were not legal citizens, and just other people who, from like a on paper standpoint, would look fine, but did not know if the particular park or the distance away would be receptive to their families. And so we bridge that gap with relationship. Over time, my involvement with outdoor spaces and beautiful people who are doing such good work in them has developed through my involvement with the Emerging Leaders Program. It's now supported heavily by GP Red, Green Play, Research, Education, Development. And the position I sit in now is helping to run a leadership development program that goes annually, bringing people together across the nation to talk about how we can change systems, how we can build movements. So although it would be fun for me to talk about my doctor hat, I think the most impactful one at the time is the leadership oversight. And two challenges I would like to charge anyone who is in a position of power here, who influences hiring or who is in strategic meetings discussing what changes or what reflections can be done for our systems to look more reflective of the communities, not only that we serve by just location, but wish to attract even further by invitation. System one would be intentional relationship with people already doing the work you're hoping to reflect further. So with me, this was 2017, 2018, the East Bay Regional Park reached out to our hospital with the hopes, knowing that the clinic that they partnered with had a very large population of lower income patient families. It was an catchment area for the marginalized to come and get good care. And it was an honor to provide that. But the East Bay Regional Park was quite wise, and our hospital in relationship was well led by Nusheen to identify that what if we can bring our patients or bring these relationships we have into this space that we want them to experience, while the park side was seeing that we want to have a wider reach to the community around us. How could we support that? The solution is not always going to look identical. As much as I would love every hospital to be connected to some outdoor space pipeline, I know that that's a long way off from happening, but there are small things that we can be doing, and there are a lot of organizations in our local area doing great work in reaching communities and reaching people of color. I know that particularly with this zoo is having a growing relationship with Groundwork, and I've always loved and respected the work that Tanner and those involved are doing with the green teams and so many other partnership programs to really invest the youth and show opportunities to work outdoors. And I would admonish and charge, again, those in leadership development, not only to see how can we partner financially or relationally support organizations in that similar capacity, but what does it look like to expand our strategic meetings to include those same individuals? There is a want of representative leadership and a huge lack of opportunity, whether that be through I'm trying to find proper words that do not sound too harsh, but are not fraught with like unnecessary barriers, that asking for criteria or asking for certificates or degrees that may not equate to actual impact for community leading. Sometimes inclusive leadership does mean revamping the invitations that we hold to bring people to the table so the table can get bigger. Second charge would additionally be in that receptiveness. Moments like these are awesome. I loved when Tanner called me saying how the local zoo wants to have a space and a platform to give to Black people, particularly during Black History Month, to just share our authentic stories. I think that's rich and awesome. I would charge that the next step be that many of the individuals, if they have the time available, allow and see if is there opportunity for the rich breadth of experience and leadership you brought forward is able to help influence leadership decisions at that capacity. I think that it's hard to move this true work forward if we are not having voices also in the rooms that decide who we bring on for staff or who we help to guide us in our initiatives moving forward. So that according to my timer, I'm hitting my mark. So I will stop there and allow Kelsey to kind of guide us and let me know if there's more to say after.
Thank you, Dr. Green. So now we're going to move into the Q&A portion. This is the time, if you have questions for the panelists, to place your answers, or excuse me, place your questions in the chat. I will also be reading off some questions that were prepared for the panelists before the meeting. And so I'm just going to share my screen real quick. Okay, so the first question for all three panelists, when you wake up each morning, what drives you to achieve your goals? And also what might get in the way? So we can start with Bowie or whoever would like to answer that question first. If you would like the question repeated, I can also do that as well. And again, the question is, when you wake up each morning, what drives you to achieve your goals? What might get in the way?
All right, I go first. When I wake up in the morning, what drives me is the fact that what I'm doing as far as work-wise is very tangible. Like I can see my progress and I can see the impact of what I'm doing. So the only thing I would say, one of the few things I would say discourages me would be just fear of taking that step and trying to move up, because it's an upward hill battle, especially when most of the people in the field don't look like you. So that's it for me.
I can go next. What drives me is knowing that I'm making a difference, especially like even if we're just going out and cutting down honeysuckle for the day. Like it's long, it's hard work, but we're helping the environment. And then if I'm working with the green team, those youth are learning a valuable skill. What gets in the way? I would have to agree with Aristotle. I feel like it's a lack of representation. Sometimes that can be discouraging, but if you just picture yourself as being that leader, then you have others that will come and follow.
And then for me, I think to blend the two halves of my life, it is wishing to provide what I wanted when I was younger, while also leveraging the power I have as a pediatrician. And for kids doctors, I want to be the best, try, not always going to succeed, but try to be the best part of their day. I get to interact with people in difficulty and frustration that they never asked for. So try to bring up hope and uplifting there. From an ELP, leadership development, outdoor nature standpoint, I recognize that the position I sit offers a lot of opportunity to uplift, support, encourage, and validate young leaders who do not need me or my program to be amazing and wonderful. They're doing great work already, but to have somebody who looks like me at the positions I have to say that you are valuable, your work is amazing, I'd love to offer support whatever way I can. It may seem small because I'm not offering a check and large financial support, but having support by another person of color in leadership, being able to model that, like, look at, I am here, while also having the knowledge of how important a word of support and uplifting can be, and doing that well and doing that frequently.
Thank you for your responses to those questions. We have another question that was sent before this event. Who is one of your heroes? and this could be Black, not Black, but who do you all look up to?
I'll take the bullet again. I go with fictional hero. It's this guy from this really dark fantasy comic book. His name is Guts. He's been through literal hell and back several times, and he still perseveres only to achieve his goal and right or wrong that he feels follows him around through life. So, but with him, the book is inspiring only just by like how massive the story is and his struggle still. So that's me. That's one of my heroes.
I love Aristotle's boldness of like, I'm pulling from this comic book, because I was just thinking, it's like, could I do that too? But for a real life hero, I would pick and give that honor to Nushin or Dr. Nushin Razani. She showed me a beautiful way to interact with people outside of the monotony of my job. And it is refreshing and supportive and awesome. And she is largely responsible for my early introduction into the nature outdoor space. I had no vision that this was something I would have time for as a doctor. And it's been one of the better parts of my working career. So I'm really thankful for her modeling the way. She's also a woman of color, Iranian, so having somebody who would, support, guide me from a place of intelligence and wisdom, but also be really real about, ways in which she felt pushed aside, or how she sometimes feels she has to push harder for something because of stakes against her. That transparency is wonderful. And then pulling from comic books, I'm really loving this. I'm a big Marvel fan. I'm really pulling from this Captain America transition. I love Steve Evans, Chris Evans, and now seeing Anthony Mackie kind of take over as like a Black Captain America, just being Captain America and all the weight that goes with it. I do recommend watching Falcon and Winter Soldier. It was worthy, but I'm loving seeing the conversation and narratives coming out as a longtime comic book and video game nerd, seeing these narratives be brought to the forefront of what it looks like for people of color to hold these same positions was awesome.
Yes, with the comic books. I haven't watched that, so now
Get
I'm
on it.
influenced.
Yeah, get on it.
All right, thank you all for answering that. We have a few more questions that were pre-made before the event for you all. So the other question is, what do you think is the biggest challenge in this field, the conservation, the outdoor space? And what is the biggest challenge for the overall Black Americans in the field? So what has this challenge been like for you? And then what do you think is the biggest challenge for like Black Americans to be a part of like the conservation and outdoor sustainability space? You all have talked about it in your presentations, but if you all can just answer however you see fit.
I'll give Aristotle a break, as he's been so boldly jumping forward to be the first. This is my favorite soapbox to talk about, and its lack of hiring and meaningful leadership positions for people of color, and the particular barrier being roadblocks that don't matter for impact being the reason, like these degrees required, certificates required. I understand, and I am a doctor, so I get that qualifications to an extent need to be sought out for to bring forth a really intentional leadership body. So I get it, but in the work we're aiming to do now, and in these conversations about reaching broader, having more representative networks, expanding our teams to make meaningful impact, and meaningful impact really only happens with true inclusivity, diversity is good. It's a great start of like, we need to see more color, more representation present. Inclusivity is like, let's now also pay them and give people positions of leadership so that their voices, their opinions can help impact change, because they are sitting on our boards, they are sitting in our leadership teams, they are hired within our systems. And so my admonishment to a lot of our leaders on this call would continue and always adamantly be to really look over what criteria we are using to decide board positions, decide who sits in our strategic planning meetings, decide who we hire for staff, so that we can modify. And sometimes it means building like a pipeline program if we want to bring in people to meet these particular criteria. More often than not, from what I've seen, it's redefining and reshaping criteria to be much more relevant to the work we want to have ahead. And I think that'll to save time. That is the same issue. I think for Black people, because I think that's the second question for Black people moving forward in this. A lot of us have excellent ideas. We've done great work. We've shown consistency and faithfulness in doing our diligence for the tasks at hand. And then when applying to promotion or going for particular jobs, it said like, oh, sorry, can't consider because I want this specific thing that many people on our leadership team may have, and we're still having the same problem. So it's not solving what we're looking for, but we still want to see it. And the alternate careers, the valuable work we're doing in communities and organizing and activism is not translating into the leadership promotional tracks it should.
I completely agree with Dr. Green. There is a severe lack of representation, not only within the Black community, but with all people of color in the field of conservation, environmental science. I feel like something that Aristotle touched on in his presentation is that it can be challenging because a lot of like the national parks are out in these rural areas where there aren't a lot of Black people or people of color. So I know like when I went to Yellowstone with groundwork, I was kind of hesitant because I was like, oh no, like I don't know, that it's kind of very far out there. I've never been that far out before. And I was very nervous because there's not much representation out there, but I took the leap and I had a great time. So I feel like something that we need to start doing is taking that leap. And then again, with what Dr. Green said, people in charge, like they need to take that leap too, because it works both ways.
And then Bowie, do you have any? Oh, I'm sorry.
Wait, what's the question again? I'm sorry.
Oh, it's just, yeah. The question was, what do you think is the biggest challenge in this field in conservation and the biggest challenge for Black Americans in this field overall?
I guess I already touched on the challenge for Black Americans. Mainly, I guess a big challenge was Black people don't go outside, don't do the camping thing, outdoors thing. It's kind of a group mentality thing on that. But as far as like the challenge for conservation goes and stuff that's within my line of work, I would say it has to be these politicians. And what bills they introduce, for me at least, because they're sponsored by people who have their own interests, and they have to satiate those people that sponsor them. So we can introduce all of the legislation we want, but if we can't get it to pass, then. And on top of that, the legislation, when it is passed, it's more beneficial to people with generational wealth than it is for people like my mom. So it's like something about an incentive of having green energy installed in your home to where I think my mentor has it to the point where he's getting paid for the energy that he creates on his apartment. But most people don't have a home. I mean, on his house, but most people don't have a home, a house, property to do that. So even if it lies within the landlord or whoever owns the property is still, money doesn't go to anybody but landlords and homeowners. So we just gotta we just gotta get more people involved. Young people need to vote locally. That's about it.
Thank you all for answering those questions. I want to move now to the chat questions. We're almost done with this event, so I just want to hold space for that. And so we have one question from Bill Collins, and it says, when Green Team high school students start doing their first few days in the job doing invasive plant removal, what are some of the feelings about this work that they can articulate to each other? And this could be for anyone to answer.
I can start. So when we first start doing the invasive work, it can be long and tedious, and the kids can lose motivation pretty quickly because they're doing like repetitively cutting down honeysuckle. It's a lot of work, but once you like sit them down and talk to them about the impact of it and how they're making a difference, I feel like the motivation comes back, and then it becomes like a little competition, like, oh, we want to clear more honeysuckle than the other green teams. So you just have to be like inspirational with them.
Yeah, I would say the same thing for that. It's once you learn, like for honeysuckle, you realize like how bad it is and why our forests look the way you do. And if you ever seen, stuff without invasives, it's like, man, this is ugly. This is horrible. I want to get rid of this right now. And so yeah, and then we bond over the fact that you drive anywhere and you see something like that, it's like, ugh, I want to cut that down. But yeah, it's a fun experience, especially with the trips doing it. It's dope.
And then Dr. Green, any experience with invasive species removal?
I do not. That's outside my scope of anything I've ever done. That's why I was like super excited. Like, man, this is a Aristotle Jada question with Green Team. I look forward to hear what they know.
Yes. All right, so we're going to move on to a second question. Let's see. So we got a question from Dan Marsh. Knowing what you know about the Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden, what do you think we should be doing to serve diverse youth and families in our community in a way that is relevant to them?
I'll just voice because we're kind of like continuing a conversation on chat. And then I'd love to hear others respond if they so desire. One of the responses I gave to Dan, and then we're like in active dialogue, was what I said earlier. Like that's my favorite soapbox. Like I've decorated it and everything about higher leadership, and how that will, when we have bringing like when you're looking at a target audience of like, I'm looking for greater Latino, or I'm looking for greater Indigenous or greater Black representation at X area, bringing in leadership to help make those discussions, make these decisions forward, have a much higher yield in all the downstream effects. It's a byproduct in seeing more Black people show up into a space and seeing more Latinos. That's a byproduct of what we're already modeling within the spheres that we can control. And then later on, Dan was like, thank you. Here's some follow-up questions and some issues we're having problems with, and I'm actively responding in volunteering Tanner. I don't know if he's still on the call, but volunteering him with Green Team and overall groundwork and myself to continue that dialogue. I love helping and support when people feel that there's a barrier in recruiting diverse employees. It's like awesome. If you're in the heart, in the space, in the interest to hire, support, and expand leadership teams to fit that, and it's just a matter of finding people, that's the easy part, easier.
Thank you for that. And we have room for one more question. I see that there was a response, Dr. Morgan, from Carrie Mack. So I just want to read out the question, and Jada or Bowie, if you would like to voice your input on this question as well, feel free. And so Carrie asked, thank you for sharing your stories and highlighting this critical issue. As a POC, what can communities do to increase the environmental viability of their area? Are individuals responsible for advocating / regulating these issues, or should our local government be pulled into the responsibility?
It I'll start off. It really depends on what kind of area they're in, because from neighborhood to neighborhood, there's not really much you can do. There's like planting edible forest gardens, which we do with groundwork and such, which I love to do, and I think it's a dope concept for people not to, especially in the era where they're closing down grocery stores in Black and brown neighborhoods and creating food deserts. You can go to a garden or go to the edible food garden and pick some fruits and vegetables and stuff that you would normally get at the grocery store, but it's too far for you to get to. But as far as like their environment, my cousin lived in the neighborhood next to a soap factory and a garbage dump. So it's kind of hard with those adverse effects, especially when most Black and brown communities are, put in the worst areas to live environmentally. So I would say it's hard. But as far as individuals responsible, I feel like it's up to the community and the government or whoever is like, if you're preaching about diversity, you have to actively try to, get people involved that, get people involved that are different from you. So, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm going on a tangent and stuff.
I'll add to that. I feel like you before you jump in like getting local government involved, these communities need an advocate, like someone who can help them see what is happening within their neighborhood and how they can take a stand against it. So I'm going to plug Groundwork's Climate Safe Neighborhoods, because this is something that we've been doing with the neighborhood of Lower Price Hill and Bond Hill and Roselawn, where Lower Price Hill is like highly industrialized. There's over 20 factories there, and the community, like, they want a change, but they don't know how to initiate that. So Groundwork, we came in and we held community meetings and we talked about like what you want to see done in your community with the hopes of actually bringing about that change. And we're also working with like community partners, University of Cincinnati, Green Umbrella, City of Cincinnati, OES, like working to help them have their voices heard. So I feel like it starts with having an advocate and someone who can help you understand what's going on within your community.
Mm-hmm. And then Dr. Green, did you have anything to add to Carrie's question?
I did not. I did respond back in the chat, just talking about that expanding knowledge base of either local advocates or environmental work. Like a lot of times we'll have these political issues or these environmental policy concerns, which are valid and important and special and should be uplifted. And there are already people thinking about that, working on that to certain capacities. And so a lot of times it's getting expanding our knowledge base of what other nonprofits, what other work, what other activism is out there in my city doing work such as this. And it's oftentimes for certain issues, you may find that you have people who, or you don't have anyone directly concerned about the one thing you're looking at. And so seeing adjacent groups, like you may be very specifically concerned about a highway or an on-ramp and planning for the building in a certain community that will bring more pollution to an already impoverished population. And there may not be organizations already thinking on that same project coming down the pipeline, but you have multiple organizations who are about healthy, happy families, clean air initiatives, more green space in our area. And you can get aligned on like, hey, another on-ramp is against your visions as well. Can we collaborate on this collectively?
I
Thank
would
you for
love
that.
to chime in quickly on that because the Cincinnati Zoo is in the neighborhood of Avondale, and we have worked through our sustainability group with the Avondale community and helped develop their quality of life plan. So it's really a great example and sort of highlights exactly what you were mentioning, Dr. Green, is just the idea that people need to talk to each other and partner and understand what the challenges are for the communities by listening and being there. And Jada, as you said, you brought up partnerships and groundwork in the zoo together, along with many of the other partners that partnerships we're developing to address some of these issues. I think that's it's really that collective impact. None of us are going to be able to do it on our own. It's just not possible. The zoo can do a lot, groundwork can do a lot, but together we're far more mighty. And I think I just so appreciate what all of you are bringing up and then bringing to the table in terms of the issues that we face in addressing some of the challenges in environmental and social justice spaces, and then how partnerships might be able to help alleviate and mitigate some of those things. So, and I'm just conscious of time. Kelsey, I'm going to hand it back to you for any final comments. And yeah, just wanted to say appreciate very much from the zoo side all of your time and your insights. This was really fun and enlightening for us, and I appreciate you guys taking the time to share your thoughts and ideas with us.
Yes, thank you all for attending and listening. I hope you can take away everything that the panelists talked about in regards to representation and engagement and partnerships, and think about like what you can be doing and also what you can be undoing, because we haven't addressed, systems of oppression, which is linked to this, and like white supremacy and colonization. And that could be like a separate conversation too that we can have. But yes, thank you all for attending. And if you all would like to check out like Groundwork's website, what the Cincinnati Zoo is doing, we can send a follow-up email from this conversation to you all and add you to our network. And so is there any last words from the panelists before we depart?
Leverage your power. That's been my position right now in what I hold for the outdoor space, and it makes a huge impact, and it's so important. Leverage your power, what you have influence to do, stretch it and push it and do more.
I just want to say thank you for having us. Thank you for listening. You being here just shows that we're taking a step forward, and representation matters. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Enjoy your lunches. If this was your lunch hour, I hope you had a great break. All right.
Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye.
That was the point of this thing.